France has announced a draconian new nationwide curfew for at least 15 days as it tries to combat the spread of coronavirus. The start of the curfew is being brought forward by 2 hours to 6 p.m. Turkey's President Erdogan has received the coronavirus vaccine developed by China's Sinovac. He had the jab live on Turkish television in a move designed to allay public doubts about its effectiveness. The leader of a WHO mission investigating the origins of coronavirus says his team is embarking on a long journey. The team has arrived in the city of Wuhan, where the pandemic began after apparent misunderstanding over the team's visas with the Chinese government. President Trump is facing an upcoming trial in the US Senate after being impeached for a second time. He's accused of inciting last week's violence at the Capitol. The focus is now turning to how many Republican senators might choose to convict the president.
Vice President Mike Pence says he will not agree to use the 25th Amendment to remove President Donald Trump from office. Italy holds its largest trial on organized crime, with 320 defendants facing serious charges. Estonia's president has asked opposition leader Kaja Kallas of the center-right Reform Party to form the next government. The move follows the resignation of the prime minister, who is facing a criminal investigation. And Japan has expanded its coronavirus state of emergency to 7 additional areas, including Osaka and Kyoto.
Johnson & Johnson says that its single-dose COVID-19 vaccine has induced immune responses for at least 71 days in a recent study. Public health officials say a one-dose vaccine would be useful because it would stretch supplies and simplify administration. Johnson & Johnson says it's hoping to get results from a larger study by the end of the month. If positive, that could clear the way for U.S. authorization of the shot in February. Federal regulators are urging Tesla to recall nearly 160,000 cars over concerns about the vehicle's touchscreens. The National Highway Traffic Safety Administration said the screens in some Model S and Model X vehicles can fail after a few years, affecting safety functions such as defogging and backup cameras. Tesla didn't immediately respond to a request for comment. In global markets, stocks in Europe edged higher in morning trading, with industrials and energy sectors leading the gains. In Asia, indexes were mixed. Looking to the day ahead, a number of big companies will report earnings, including Delta and BlackRock, and analysts are expecting about 800,000 new weekly jobless.
We begin with an international investigation into the origins of the coronavirus. Scientists from the World Health Organization have arrived in the Chinese city of Wuhan, where the virus was first detected. They hope to find out where it came from and how it started to spread. A team of 13 scientists are beginning their time in Wuhan with 2 weeks in quarantine. They then plan to investigate what happened at the start of the pandemic. Details of their schedule have not been made public. The team's leader told NHK last month that it's logical to think the virus originated in China. He said this week that the team will investigate the initial cases in detail and try to find out if there also were early cases in other areas. Still, he suggested they won't get all the answers during this visit.
I don't think we will have clear answers after this initial mission. But we will be on the way, and hopefully in the coming months that will be completed by additional missions, additional studies, and leading us slowly to a better understanding of the origin of the virus.
Chinese government experts initially said the virus came from bats in China, but lately they said they couldn't rule out the possibility it was brought in from abroad because it had been detected in some imported foods. It remains to be seen whether the team will get enough cooperation from the Chinese government. It's also not clear whether they will be allowed to investigate the Wuhan laboratory from which U.S. President Donald Trump claimed the virus has escaped. China is seeing a resurgence in coronavirus cases. It has reported its first COVID-19 death since May. The National Health Commission says more than 200 new cases were confirmed on Wednesday. Turning to an update on the coronavirus situation here in Japan, experts are warning the current wave of infections is putting increasing strain on the medical system in the capital. They say hospitals are being forced to turn away some COVID-19 patients, and hotels where those with mild or no symptoms are asked to quarantine are full. The daily tally of new cases in Tokyo has been well over the 1,000 level for much of the past week. 135 people in the capital are now in serious condition. Public health experts report the average number of daily cases is up 65% this week compared to a week earlier.
The current situation may reflect an explosive spread of infections.
With hospital beds filling up, more than 8,000 people who tested positive are quarantining at home. 3 have died, including 2 people who had pre-existing conditions. Hospital beds for COVID-19 patients are also running low in other parts of the greater Tokyo region. One reason is that some patients need to stay in hospital long after testing negative as they recover. Even after testing negative, other hospitals are reluctant to accept these patients. Japan has among the most hospital beds per capita in the world, but there are relatively few doctors, and many hospitals are small and private run, making it harder to accept COVID-19 patients. The Prime Minister is urging medical associations to help secure more hospital beds for coronavirus patients and to prepare for a vaccination drive.
We need your continued cooperation to provide necessary medical assistance to those who need it.
In an effort to curb the contagion, the central government added 7 prefectures to its state of emergency on Thursday. The measure will remain in place until February 7th. People are asked to refrain from non-essential outings and help reduce the number of commuters by 70% by working from home. But it appeared to be business as usual in the newly added prefectures on Thursday morning compared to the state of emergency last spring.
The train was crowded.
I don't see any significant changes.
Some businesses are finding it hard to shift to remote work. This bank developed a new system to allow employees to access confidential data from home. It has also introduced flexible working hours, but the ratio of telework is still around 30%.
A 70% reduction is a high hurdle because a certain number of staff must be in the office, including those who are at the service counter. We plan to reduce the number of in-office staff at our headquarters since they don't handle customer service.
Experts say that senior managers or leaders of industry groups should set concrete guidelines instead of relying on the personal judgment of workers. The minister in charge of the country's coronavirus response says the government plans to provide financial assistance to the western city of Hiroshima, where the situation is worsening. A portion of those funds would be used to subsidize businesses that shorten their operating hours, as is happening in prefectures under the state of emergency. Health authorities reported more than 6,600 new cases across Japan on Thursday. Over 310,000 people have tested positive in the country since the pandemic began. The latest wave of coronavirus infections in South Korea appears to be subsiding. The government attributes this to measures that include a ban on groups of 5 or more people dining together. Health authorities say the daily number of new infections hovered around 500 for 4 days in a row this week. The number hit a high of 1,241 on December 24th. It sporadically topped 1,000 until early this month. A health official said a ban on gathering or dining in groups of 5 or more are proving effective. That ban has been in place since last month. Any restaurant caught in violation faces a fine of up to about $2,700. The fine for customers is up to about $90. The government initially said these measures would be in place until January 17th. Officials now say they are monitoring the situation and considering whether to keep them in place for longer. Indonesia has begun a large-scale inoculation campaign against the coronavirus. Health workers have priority in the campaign to receive a vaccine developed by a Chinese pharmaceutical company. About 50 of them were given the Sinovac biotech vaccine at a hospital near Jakarta on Thursday. The Indonesian government authorized its emergency use earlier this week. Officials say it had an efficacy rate of 65.3% in tests in the country, meeting WHO requirements. President Joko Widodo received the vaccine the day before to demonstrate its reported safety. Sinovac's vaccine has not been approved in China, but Beijing has been administering it on an emergency basis.
I had doubts at first, but now, after seeing the president vaccinated, I believe in this vaccine. I hope it will help us to overcome the pandemic.
Indonesia has secured over 125 million doses of the Sinovac vaccine and is trying to procure more from other companies. The government plans to vaccinate about 40 million people by April. Indonesia has reported the highest numbers of cases and deaths from the coronavirus in Southeast Asia. U.S. judicial authorities have been trying to identify and take action against those who stormed the Capitol last week. An Olympic swimming gold medalist was among those charged with the alleged participation in the riot. Cleet Keller was charged on Wednesday with knowingly entering a restricted building. Documents submitted to a court say media outlets identified Keller among the rioters in the Capitol building in video footage. He was wearing a U.S. Olympic team jacket. Authorities have charged at least 70 people in connection with the incident. 2 off-duty police officers face criminal charges of unlawful entry. A West Virginia state lawmaker and a son of a court judge in New York State were also arrested. In Washington, digital photos of people who took part in the violence have been put up at bus stops. A reward of $50,000 is being offered for information. In South Korea, the country's top court has upheld a 20-year prison term for ex-president Park Geun-hye on bribery and other charges. The 68-year-old was removed from office in 2017 after being impeached by lawmakers. She denied any wrongdoing but was convicted of taking millions of dollars from major conglomerates, including the Samsung Group and the country's intelligence agency. Park was initially sentenced to 30 years behind bars, but the Supreme Court repealed the rulings in 2019 and sent her cases back to a lower court. A decision last July reduced her sentence to 20 years, along with a fine of about $16 million. Prosecutors had appealed that ruling, but Thursday's Supreme Court ruling brings the legal process to an end. Park was already facing a separate sentence for election law violations. While she isn't the only former South Korean president to face jail time, even the 3 years and 9 months she has already spent behind bars is longer than any of her predecessors, since some were pardoned. Observers are watching to see whether the current president Moon Jae-in will do the same for Park. Universal Studios Japan says it is delaying the opening of a theme park zone featuring the popular Nintendo character Mario for a second time. The move follows the government's declaration of a COVID-related state of emergency for Osaka Prefecture, where the park is located. Universal Studios Japan originally planned to open Super Nintendo World in July last year, but the spread of the virus prompted the park operator to push the date back until early February. It now says it will announce a new opening date after the state of emergency ends. The operator has invested about $580 million in the venture in a bid to draw more visitors. The state of emergency is currently in place for 11 prefectures, including Osaka and Tokyo. Warmer weather is expected to stay around for a couple of days in parts of Japan. Our meteorologist Jonathan Oh has a look at the forecast in world weather.
Hello, looks like we're going to see temperatures that are similar to what we usually see at the early part of spring, as